What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. Right now, I feel like $100,000.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Wise here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders like the founders you've heard of, some you've never heard of, like the founder of P90X, Tony Horton. He talked about how he made money as a street mime. Okay, that's how he'd make money, his food and rent money. He'd put a hat on the street, do street miming, and that's how he made money before he sold hundreds of millions of dollars of the P90X programs. Baby Einstein founder Julie Clark talks about growing her company to $20 million with 5 employees, selling it to Disney. But Ed, you'd appreciate this. You know, the most important and I thought most impactful was she did this and she beat cancer twice while starting and running these companies. Atari founder Nolan Bushnell talked about when he was Steve Jobs' mentor. Steve offered Nolan 33% of Apple for $50,000 and why he said no. Imagine that, and many more. So check out InspiredInsider.com. And this episode is brought to you by Rise 25, which I co-founded with my business partner, John Corcoran. And at Rise 25, we help B2B businesses connect to their Dream 100 clients and referral partners, and we help you run your podcast so it generates ROI. And for me, Ed, podcasting is much more personal. I mean, obviously, it's the best thing I've done for my business and my life. Had, amazing relationships, referral partners, strategic partners, but it was inspired by my grandfather, who was a Holocaust survivor. And him and his brother were in concentration camps in Nazi Germany. And they were only members of their family to survive. And his legacy lives on because the Holocaust Foundation did an interview with him and to tell his story. And he's not alive anymore, but I could still watch that interview, and I put it on my About page, actually, on Inspired Insider, to motivate me and it just helps him leave a legacy. So yes, podcasting helps your business, but it really helps you and your guests leave a legacy beyond what we can do. And so our brain power doesn't vanish into the ether. So if you have questions about it, you can go to rise25.com or email us support@rise25media.com. And I believe any business should have a podcast, period. And I know Ed has a podcast. You'll check it out too. And Ed, let me just introduce Ed for a second before we chat, because just a jack of all, really a master, not jack of all trades, a master of many trades. Ed Clay is a former professional mixed martial arts fighter turned fighter of end-stage cancer. Through the CHIPSA hospital, he started in Mexico, and the United Cancer Centers, which are in the U.S. And at one point, he was ranked as high as number 9 in the world, ran one of the largest mixed martial arts schools in the United States. And he would say, I've heard him say he's a better coach than an actual fighter, but so I can't imagine how good a coach you are based on that. But some of his students have been in the Ultimate Fighting Championships. His clothing brand Gameness was acquired in 2011 and was one of the largest suppliers of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu martial arts uniforms in the world. And in 2015, he partnered up with Nelson and Deddrick Perry, and they acquired CHIPSA Hospital in Tijuana, Mexico. And they took cancer management head on. They brought conventional and alternative science of medicine. I know people drive and fly from all over the US and even world to go to their center because of the combinations of conventional alternative they bring together to attack cancer from all angles. And Ed also started United Cancer Centers, which help the sickest cancer patients around the United States, and has put together a team of some of the most experienced doctors, scientists, and researchers. If you go to UnitedCancerCenters.com and check out the team, it's just, I don't even know how he got these people to say yes. And he's going to tell me how. But Ed, thanks for having me. Ed, thanks for for being with me.
Thanks for having me on, Jeremy. Thank you.
So I want you to tell the story about your mom because it's really influential, but I want to hold off on that for 1 second, because I was saying, and we've talked about this before we hit record, about United Cancer Centers. When you describe your team, it's like the all-star team. So talk about the team and how do you attract that type of talent?
Yeah, I think that it's you attract people that share your vision. So we're very vision driven and mission driven, and we believe in this idea that people can get along, and that different people with a little different difference in opinion can come together if you have the same goal. And so we're just really blessed and fortunate to have guys like Dr. Franco Marancola, who was the former chief of immunogenetics for the National Institute of Health. He actually wrote one of the main textbooks that oncologists use for immunotherapy for cancer. Guys like Dr. Michael Liebman, who sits on 14 scientific advisory boards, professor at 3 medical schools, including one in China, is actually head of the translational medicine department of the Pharma Foundation, which is big pharma. Lots of guys like that. Our whole team is stacked. In a Wang, Dr. Vijay Mahant, just postdoc at MD Anderson, a leader in liquid biopsy, things like that. So we really share a vision and come together and realize that we have a lot more in common than against each other per se. Actually, we have a lot in common. We get along great, and we charge forward doing our best to help cancer patients and trying to fix the system that is set up in the United States, where it's kind of an older system. The FDA has done a lot really in the last 10 years to make gains in clinical trials. But the system was built in 1963 when the FDA was formed. And so it's still a little slow compared to what we would like.
Yeah. I mean, I think this applies whether you're in healthcare or business or whatever. Attracting the best team is paramount. And so talk about how hard was it to get these people on board with your mission, and how does that conversation go?
Sure. So, when we first started CHIPSA, CHIPSA was doing a lot of natural therapies, and we were completely open-minded. And we saw some people getting better with stage 4 cancer that had failed standard of care, but a lot of people were still dying. We actually, and we're like, look, this isn't okay. How do we build a bridge with the conventional community? Because quite frankly, stage 4 cancer, the conventional community doesn't have a very good answer for it. The alternative community doesn't have a really good answer for it. And it's like, why are we throwing stones at each other? Why does the alternative side throw giant stones to the conventional side throw giant stones to the alternative side, while there's no really good answer? And so we actually started working with a company called Batu Biologics. They did a trial at our hospital, treated about 250 patients. The trial cost them probably $750,000. We did it at cost. It would have cost them, up to $25 million in the United States. And they actually had 2 Nobel Prize winners on their on different boards. One of them, or actually 1 Nobel Prize winner on their board, and then they also had Dr. Franco Marancola, who is now our Chief Medical Officer for United Cancer Centers, and just started becoming friends with a lot of the people on their team. Another company called Immunicom, their team, IC MedTech, their team, and Franco, Dr. Marancola, was the past president of the Society of Immunotherapy for Cancer, which is probably the largest nonprofit for immunotherapy for cancer. And this last year, 5,000 to 10,000 people at their convention, and he really kind of opened up his network, and they're working on a lot of the things that we're doing at CHIPSA. Intermittent fasting before chemotherapy, turning a tumor from cold to hot, all these concepts that we really believe in, focusing on different types of diet for cancer, not necessarily as a treatment, but as a good adjunct diet. And we were actually studying those things and doing those things, a lot of those things as well. And they were doing it, but taking a much more scientific approach, and they have a lot of data coming out. So we just started working together. We became good friends, and he shares the vision. He's also the founder and editor-in-chief of the Journal of Translational Medicine. And translational medicine isn't really done that much in the United States, but not done anymore, but it was before 1962. It's from bench to bedside. How can a clinician also be a scientist? And a lot of people don't make that distinction, but clinicians aren't scientists in general. And so the bench to bedside, how do you see something with a patient and make an adjustment that can make a difference, and then figure out how to make that work scientifically as well? So that's really what he's passionate about. And that, in a lot of ways, is what United Cancer Centers will be doing as well. Bench to bedside, how do we get that translational medicine, back in medicine today?
We'll talk about, I'll have you talk about some of the patients and some of the cancers, and then some of the types of treatments, alternative and then conventional. But why that huge disparity of 25 million in the U.S. versus 750,000 for you to help them get it done?
It's expensive to run clinical trials in the United States. I mean, you pay, you have to have all the doctors and all the scientists and all the insurance and all the regulations that go into doing that in the United States. And it's not that much. It doesn't cost near that much in Mexico if you really do it at cost and you're not looking to make a profit off of it. And you're trying to do it at the lowest cost possible to give them the best possible data that you can. So yeah, it's really just that.
So some things, Ed, have changed in the law that, I want you to talk about the United Cancer Centers and kind of what you'll be using as far as there's some changes with the laws of the trial, right? So talk a little bit about what's going on and then what is United Cancer Centers going to do.
Yeah, sure. So the right to try legislation passed in June of 2018. It was already passed in 42 states, I believe it was, at the state level. But this was the federal legislation. It was bipartisan legislation. And it says that any drug that's been through a phase 1 trial, phase 1 FDA trial, the patient can ask that specific pharmaceutical company for the drug, and the pharmaceutical company can give them that drug without bad repercussions like the data being used against them in future clinical trials or being sued. So that was a big change in the law that really allowed patients access. Now, the pharmaceutical company can say no to the patient, and what United Cancer Centers is, we're the first institution to implement the right to try legislation. So we'll go and make deals with the pharmaceutical companies and biotech companies so we have access to these drugs so patients can get them fast. And then we'll be actually hitting more data points than in a normal FDA trial. So we'll be collecting more data for the pharmaceutical companies so they have a good idea how their product is going to perform in future clinical trials. We'll also be using like a hypothesis that we create based off of all of our scientists and what they really want to learn as far as immune responsiveness and how the tumor microenvironment works and how you turn tumors from cold to hot and get the immunotherapies to work better. So we'll be looking at things like low-dose chemotherapy, fractionated radiation, different ways of doing conventional methods that in many ways cause less side effects but could make the immunotherapy drugs, the new conventional immunotherapy drugs, work better. So things like intermittent fasting too, like little adjustments, and then using those data points and allowing the biotechs and pharmaceutical companies that are working with us with their drugs to look at them differently in combination. So it's really kind of opening up the possibility for pharmaceutical companies and biotech companies to get great data on their drugs at not an extra cost. I mean, it's not going to cost them $25 million to get that anymore. The patient pays just the cost of the medication. So at least the pharmaceutical company's cost is taken care of, the medication. And then it's a win-win across the board because they're not paying an exorbitant amount of money for this drug. And the pharmaceutical company also gets amazing data too. And most importantly, it benefits the patient when the drug works. And we have a good idea based off genetic information what drugs could work and might not work. And we'll be picking those drugs from the pharmaceutical companies based off the patient's genetic profile.
And it seems like you're creating just almost like even a bigger vision beyond that with the database you're forming that's going to help cancers overall. What's your ultimate vision with that?
Yeah, so well, a couple of things. I mean, the data is very, very important. And sometimes people debate like, oh, y'all aren't collecting the data with this right to try thing. But like, no, wait a second. You can't say that. We're collecting way more data. We're going to be collecting more data than anyone, I believe. So at least that's the goal. We also have, we're also going to be working with IBM Watson using their supercomputer to aggregate data for us and actually give patients an idea of what drugs are available in different countries. So if we don't have something available here, oh, you can go to China for this. Oh, you can go here for this. We want them to stay here and to use use drugs that we have access to. But if we don't have access to something, we want the best for the patient. So then we'll say, hey, it's here in Germany. You're welcome to call them. Here's the number, et cetera. So we really want to give the patients access and transform the whole process for them.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's game changing because I mean that's you have the unique perspective because of CHIPSA, and be able to do certain things that maybe people wouldn't be able to do in the U.S. And well, why make it only Mexico, right? Because someone may in China have some kind of mushroom that would help someone. So that kind of leads me to, I know in you're public about this, so I'll ask it right out. At one point, you will get into your martial arts career, but you had so much pain and you were addicted to pain pills because you just need to get through. And this kind of relates, right? That journey of that addiction. So I want, talk a little bit about that.
Sure. In around 2007, I tore my LCL, PCL, meniscus. We had team doctors at our MMA gym. They'd give me prescription pain pills, and I was taking them for about 2 years. And I went to stop one day and went through a withdrawal and took another pill. Of course, the withdrawal ends, and I tried that over a 6-month period. 4 or 5 times. Went through that process. Was unsuccessful getting off of them, and so I went to a therapist, and I told the therapist, I'm completely functional running my companies, but I'd rather have a clear brain and deal with the pain than a foggy brain and no pain whatsoever. And the therapist told me America's behind the times when it comes to opiate withdrawal. You need to Google ibogaine. And so I Google ibogaine, and it comes from Africa. It's illegal in the United States. Supposedly it stopped 100% of opiate withdrawals. I didn't really believe it. But then I watched a couple of documentaries like, yeah, you know what? I'll give it a try, And so I took a plane to Mexico City and took a bus a couple hours south, did ibogaine in somebody's bedroom, was home 72 hours later, never had a withdrawal, never had a craving, never done another opiate since. And so then I asked myself, if that's not available in the United States but can help people, what else is out there? And then that sent me down the rabbit hole to where we are today.
I don't know if it's too personal, but what happened in that bedroom? Like what do they do?
Well, ibogaine is, probably the strongest psychedelic drug in the world. So it's deeply introspective. It's what the Bwiti used for the rites of passage ceremony. So I dealt with a lot of things maybe that I was afraid of or was faced with in some different perspective. And it just gave me a lot of insight for even more love and compassion for my family. I think one of my greatest fears was my mom, who was sick, dying without knowing how much I loved her. That really scared me. Both my parents, like, we see with Kobe Bryant, with what just happened to Kobe Bryant, it's like stunning for the country. It's like so quick. Are you telling your mom you love her? Are you telling your dad you love him? Your family, your friends, are you doing that? Because you might not get a chance tomorrow. Yeah. And that is what, I think that's what's really important. That's actually one of the main things I got from that. Like, go tell your friends and family, especially your mom and dad, that you love them, because you're not going to be around forever.
Ed, you had an amazing interview, and I encourage people to check it out with you, Scott, and Eddie Bravo. And tell people first where they can find that, and I'll talk about what I was going to ask you.
Yeah, thebigideapodcast.com.
Okay. Yeah, check it out. It's 2 hours and 15 minutes worth every minute. But, Eddie talks about how in that his dad never told him he loved him. And so then he basically was talking about how I don't know, if it was his son or one of his children, he basically tells him like every second, he's like, yeah, Dad, I know. And it's kind of exactly what you were talking about.
Yeah, I mean, Eddie was saying that his dad didn't really tell him he loved him a lot. And so he's telling his son all the time, I love, he's like, Dad, you said it like 20 times a day, but that's important. That's important. We may not realize every day because we take a lot for granted. I think that we all take certain things for granted. And, it takes something like what happened with Kobe or a close friend or loved one to realize, hey, we need to value every single day and, really tell those people that we love them.
One of the things that you talked a lot about with the three of you in that conversation was mindset, and especially with the mixed martial arts background, mindset is key. And then you were joking around saying, it's not emphasized enough as far as in cancer treatments, right? So talk about the importance of mindset and how you incorporate that into CHIPSA and into the treatment.
Yeah, I always say, mindset could be the most important thing. I'm not saying that it is, but it could be. I don't know. It could be. And, you look at I relate everything or a lot of things to fighting, mixed martial arts fighting. It's combat. One person goes in the cage, two people go in the cage, one person's going to win. And I mean, it would be stupid if I were training a fighter to tell him, don't worry about your mindset. It doesn't matter. Don't focus. Don't get in the zone. Don't visualize. Don't do those things that we can't exactly quantify scientifically and say this is getting the result, but we know that it is. We know it. We know it makes a difference. And so for cancer patients, I think it's very underutilized. I don't think that it's used enough, and it might be the most important thing, having a good mindset, being focused, knowing what you want, visualizing, manifesting those things to become real, and not being attached to the result. Not saying, oh, I had a very positive mindset. It didn't work this time. Like, no, you know what? That happens. That's all of us. Nobody's figured it all out, but we know that it's important to have a good mindset. So, at CHIPSA, we have a class called The Power of the Mind, where we really, it's a group class where they really dig into what's going on and really kind of bring it back to what's important, which is human connection. We also have 3 psychologists full-time that work with our patients. And so they can really kind of go in, and a lot of people say that CHIPSA is kind of like the spiritual experience for them, because we're hitting the mindset, deeply. And we're giving those patients an opportunity to heal that, because so if that healing supports them in their ultimate healing of their cancer, then, it's a giant win.
How did you prepare while you were fighting? Like before a fight or training, how did you prepare as far as focus and getting in the state and everything like that?
Well, I mean, so I was ranked number 9 in the world at one point by the Shudo organization, but I like to say that was only after 3 professional fights, and they really wanted to get me into their organization. I was very good in the gym at the time and young, and one of the first really MMA guys that was training, high-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, high-level boxing, professional level boxing, professional level Muay Thai kickboxing, and I was one match away from the All-American Wrestling. So the combination then was great. Now, it's a little, everybody's like that, But, the mind, I say that because the mindset for me going into fight and what I would train my fighters was, every time they would do a push-up, and I got this from Lloyd Irvin, they would say, I am a champion. I am a champion. I am a champion. Those I am statements are super important. If you're doing, any type of training, I love those I am statements. At the end of a training session, walking them through a 5 to 15 minute guided meditation where they see themselves in the ring, they go through their perfect game plan. At the end of the fight, they see their hand being raised. When they stand up every time, raising their hands. So it's a lot of those things that are kind of subliminal that, that's just, you go into them over and over. It becomes a practice. I am a champion. I am a champion. I'm okay. I've got this. Focus. So really focusing on where they want to go in the fight and using affirmations to support the result.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. That's super powerful. Anyone could use that. Your mom, one of the inspirations behind this is your mom. What happened with her?
Yeah. So, after the whole Ibogaine story, I was looking for, I was like, what else is out there that's not available in the United States that can help people? My mom had a very aggressive version of rheumatoid arthritis, and she had failed the standard medications. She had broke her back on a short fall from the prednisone. She had gotten tuberculosis from a side effects of another one of the medications, and multiple staph infections. So she couldn't take the immunosuppressants. They're suppressing their immune system. She has an overactive immune system with an autoimmune disease. It was suppressing her immune system. So she couldn't handle those medications. And so I was looking for answers for her, and I came across a paper on Coley's toxins for rheumatoid arthritis that was written in 1923. And to me, not being a scientist, it just made common sense. Like, instead of suppressing the immune system, it stimulated the immune system. And so it reset it from the other way. So Coley's would go in and it activates the innate immune system, does a lot of things to the body, and causes acute inflammation. Like when she did the Coley's, her joints really swelled up. And then the next day it was down tremendously. And it was like, okay, our hypothesis made sense. Now that's just one anecdotal patient. This has not been scientifically proven, but it did, like, okay, you're on the right path. And actually it deserves more study. But so for her, she was our second patient. We actually bought the hospital that had the Coley's toxins. So this hospital was the only hospital in North America that had it. It had been closed for about 2 years. And she came in.
How do you discover the hospital?
Oh my gosh, it was luck. So we were very familiar with a lot of the alternative treatments. We were familiar with Coley's toxins. We were familiar with Gerson therapy, and we actually drove by it with a guy who we were looking at an ibogaine facility with and saying, oh yeah, our 5 to 7 year plan is cancer, but this is where we're starting. And he's like, let me take you by this hospital that nobody's at anymore that closed down. And we took a picture of the hospital, called a real estate agent, while we were back in Nashville, called a real estate agent in Tijuana and said, hey, here's a picture of this hospital. Do you know what it is? He said, do you know the owner? And he's like, yeah. He said, well, that was the original Gerson hospital. Like, what? And I'm like, was that the hospital with Coley's toxins? Could that be it? Sure enough, we met the owner, and it had closed 2 years later. He was kind of retiring. He's almost 70 years old. And so we purchased it from him. My mom was our second patient. And she came in a wheelchair. Actually, the arthritis was attacking her organs. She had it covered from head to toe in a rash, and she left 3 weeks later walking, and the rash went away about 6 weeks later. So
what did you do with her? Actually, back up a second. So it's like, yeah, we bought the hospital. My mom, I want to stick on the bought the hospital thing. Like what is the discussion with you and Scott and Deddrick around, hey, I got this, like people have hard enough time, like, hey, where do you want to go eat for dinner? Like, hey, I just passed this hospital. Let's buy it. What did that conversation look like with the three of you?
Well, I mean, we had been looking to figure out the licensing issues in Mexico for a long time. So this hospital, had a license, and it was like, hey, so, instead of having to go through the whole licensing process, this one already has a pathway to it. It's already, got COFA approval, or has in the past, and we just get to, get the licensing again. But it was, Scotty actually was initially involved in the project, and I had spent a lot of cash over the years working on this, and he came in and helped out really with the rest. So Scotty was just on board to make a difference and to help my mom. I mean, he's obviously very successful, in his other businesses as well. And, but he was just on board, for the mission to make a difference. He's almost 50 years old now, and he's like, man, I got to make a big difference outside of mixed martial arts in the world. That's kind of what Scotty's about. For those that know Scotty, I mean, Scotty has more friends just about anybody I know. Like if you look at his life, he has had a life of service in mixed martial arts. I mean, he's one of the first people to sponsor a lot of Brazilian jiu-jitsu and mixed martial arts fighters. People were always sleeping on his couch. Yeah, he was one of the first Americans to go to Brazil. All the Americans that went to Brazil would stay with Scotty. He just helped. What do you need? Here's some shirts. Here's some gear. So that's what his life was even before that. And, this was an opportunity to give back on a bigger picture thing that makes a difference in society and with humanity.
How did you meet Scott?
Gosh, I met Scotty when I was 15 years old at a Brazilian jiu-jitsu tournament. I think it was like the Joe Moreira tournament in California. I didn't have a lot of money growing up, but my mom worked for American Airlines, and so I flew for free. And so I would fly out to the tournaments, and Scotty was always there. So I met him 23, almost 24 years ago.
And was there any relationship beyond that with training or anything like that? How did it progress throughout the years when you were 15?
Oh my gosh, we've been best friends for that long. And we trained together. Scotty had OTN, which is on the mat. He also had a competitor of my company, Lucky Geese. We joke because people are like, oh, y'all are competitors. Yes, but we shared everything. We shared the same manufacturer. Anytime Scotty needed help, I would help him. Anytime he needed help or I needed help, he would help me. I mean, it was always, how do we help each other with two competing companies, reach our goal? It's a lot easier to get ahead by working with each other than against each other. And so we've worked together for a very long time as competitors, but as partners in a way.
And then Deddrick, how do you know Deddrick?
So I met Deddrick. He had just got out of the advertising industry, very successful in the advertising industry in Chicago. And he wanted to see the impact that he could make on a smaller company. And so we interviewed him for Nashville Mixed Martial Arts. Actually, my brother interviewed him. He's like, hey, this guy's way overqualified. I got to meet him. He kind of told me what he was wanting to do. I'm like, yeah, man, come on in. And he ended up buying Nashville Mixed Martial Arts from me eventually. And but when this project was finally coming around, and it took a long time. I mean, we did CHIPSA fast, but we were working on figuring out the licensing issues for, let's see, probably 5 years before that.
Wow.
So we've been working on it for 5 years before we even opened CHIPSA.
Mm.
And, so when that happened, Deddrick sold Nashville Mixed Martial Arts and came and moved to Tijuana as well. All three of us moved to Tijuana, Mexico.
So back to your mom for a second. And if anyone's experienced family or friend with rheumatoid arthritis, it like basically eats away at your joints. I mean, it's eating your own body, your autoimmune disease. So she was in a wheelchair, then she's walking and doing a million times better. What were some of the things that you did with her to help? Yeah,
so, the first thing is diet. She did a very strict Gerson therapy, which is 13 fresh pressed organic juices a day, 5 coffee enemas a day. It's all, 15 to 20 pounds of fresh pressed organic juices a day. It's
wow.
A lot. You're pumping a lot in. And then the coffee enemas, the idea is that it opens up the bile ducts in your liver, pumps out the toxins through your gallbladder and out your stomach. So your blood pumps to your liver once every 3 or so minutes. At a 15-minute coffee enema, you'd be looking at 15 or 5 times. So constantly putting in all of those phytochemicals and all of that goodness from the organic juices, the pressed organic juices, and then dumping out the toxins. So that was number one. Number two is was the choline as well, the choline toxins. Choline toxins, it's an amazing, drug, amazing treatment that was actually, it was discovered in 1891 or was made in 1890. Do you know the history of choline toxins?
No, I don't.
Oh
no.
My God. So Dr. William Coley is considered the father of immunotherapy. He was working at Memorial Hospital, which is now Sloan Kettering. He
very
he
famous
was a surgeon. He had a patient named Betsy Daschle who had a sarcoma, and he amputated her arm thinking that was going to stop the spread of the cancer. It didn't. She died a few weeks later, and it really upset him. So Dr. Coley went through the files of Memorial Hospital to see if anybody had survived a sarcoma. Nobody had survived a sarcoma except one patient. He found this patient. It was like 7 years later, brought him back in, and it turned out while the patient was had the sarcoma, he also got an erysipelas infection. And when he almost died of that infection, but when he survived the infection, the cancer was gone. So Dr. Coley thought, well, if an accidental infection can cause a spontaneous remission, then an intentional infection should also cause a spontaneous remission. So he infected multiple patients with the live bacteria. Some went into complete remission. Others actually died from the infection. So then Dr. Coley changed it from a live bacteria to a dead bacteria, 2 types of dead bacteria. And from 1891 to 1936, Dr. Coley had a higher success rate treating most cancers than we do today. His daughter founded the Cancer Research Institute in like 1952. A lot of the immunotherapy drugs that we're seeing today, the checkpoint inhibitors, the scientists from the Cancer Research Institute actually worked on those. Dr. Helen Coley-Knotts, which is Dr. Coley's daughter, she actually mentored a doctor named Lloyd Old, who was the vice president of Sloan Kettering. Because of Dr. Old, I think he's a big reason we also have immunotherapy for cancer today. And, in the textbooks, Coley's toxins was made illegal in the United States in 1965.
Why?
Even though doctors were saying, no, actually this stuff did work. And now today, Dr. Coley in the textbooks is still considered the father of immunotherapy. And it's not a question of if his treatment worked. It absolutely worked. But there's other reasons really today that it's not available.
Why was it illegal? Why was it deemed illegal?
Well, back then, so you figure mustard gas was made available in 1948. They were using it for blood cancers, and they thought for some reason that if we use this toxin, if there's this chemotherapy, in a solid tumor, it's going to work the same as a blood tumor. And they did that for 70 plus years, it seems like. But it didn't work. And I think that they were so focused on those drugs, and Coley's didn't really fall into that. They didn't understand how it worked. They didn't really believe the immune system played a role. And so they came up with a lot of reasons to not do it.
Yeah.
But Coley's toxins now, there's a drug called CPG. Pfizer has a patent for CPG. They have multiple clinical trials. A couple others have a variation of CPG. CPG is just one of the danger signals in Coley's toxins. Coley's toxins is really hard to patent. You could patent it, but you could also make a small adjustment. And so if a pharmaceutical company is going to put $1 billion into a clinical trial with, say, Coley's toxins, and somebody can come in and change the patent a little bit and make a similar drug, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for them from a commercial standpoint. So nobody's, going to do that. But in my opinion, Coley's toxins is the best adjuvant out there. And I think historically it has been too. And I think historically, if you look at the numbers, it has higher success than most of the things that we're doing today.
So I wanted to walk through a few patients, that you've seen through CHIPSA, and to give people an example of the combination of the conventional and alternative with some of them. And what are some of the most common? Because they come to you in what state typically? They're in stage 3, 4. What's
failed standard of care, or stage 4 and given like 6
Go ahead. What were you saying?
Yeah, sorry. Most of the patients have failed standard of care, or stage 4 and have failed standard of care. So they've already gone through the best of conventional therapy, and that has failed, or they're stage 4 and they were given, 6 months to live, 3 months to live. So basically what the right to try law in the United States is now set up for.
How do people find you?
Mostly the internet or word of mouth. So, internet or word of mouth.
Or this show.
This
show could save someone's life. Who knows?
Absolutely.
They've never heard of the facility before.
Yeah, absolutely. With CHIPSA Hospital, it makes a big difference. We don't have all the answers. Anybody who says they have a cure is lying. I always look at when people say, "Oh, I know what's going on." Like, you don't know what's going on, because the people that are studying this the most don't know what's going on. In reality, nobody really knows. It's not an easy answer. This stuff's super complicated. You could have two patients. I always say this: you could have two patients with the same cancer treated with the same treatments. One patient responds, one patient doesn't. Why is that? It's very, very complicated. But we do have some cool options in Mexico that I've seen. Stage 4 cancer go away. The trick is to it staying away, but I've also seen old school patients, 15, 20, 25, 40 years out, that are still alive to this day. And, that's really promising.
Walk me through a memorable case so people get a sense of the mixture of conventional and alternative. What patients stick out for you that have come through the clinic?
Let's see. Gosh, well, that really combines. We got him Ryan Lelf, stage 4 B-cell follicular lymphoma. Conventional therapy has a pretty good response to lymphoma, although it's not a curative response. But we've done a nice little combination with him. Laura Payne. Laura came to us in hospice. She actually drove from Knoxville, Tennessee, all the way to Tijuana, Mexico, because she couldn't fly and there was pressure on her brain. And she was blind in her left eye when she came. And within 2 weeks, she got vision back. It was a giant tumor coming out of her head. We got about an 80% reduction. Now it's 3 years later. She's having a rough time right now battling back, but that's a good example of someone who we drastically extended their life without toxic side effects. It's 3 years ago from hospice to where she is.
What kind of treatments do you do with her? What would be?
It would be a combination, like lower dose chemotherapy, like a 15 to 20% dose, I believe she was doing, different immunotherapies. We've got, of course, diet, we believe is really important as well. Something called VG5000, which is a placental based vaccine that cuts off the blood supply, kind of like an Avastin, but a little different. Gosh, I think she's done dendritic cell vaccines. I mean, we do dendritic cell vaccines at CHIPSA. Provenge is the only dendritic cell that's approved in the United States through the FDA for prostate cancer. 3 doses is $93,000. We can do those 3 doses for about $12,500 to put it in perspective, but same type of thing. So Laura's done that. Lymphokine activated killer cells. In the 1980s, they did a lot of studies on that. They haven't done a lot of studies, though. The National Cancer Institute did studies on that. They haven't done studies, though, in combination therapy. We use it in combination. Don't look at it as standalone therapy. A lot of stuff that we're doing, some has been studied, but it's studied as standalone therapies. And a lot of these treatments really aren't designed for standalone. You need combination. You need to hit it from different ways to work on the biology of cancer.
Yeah, I know. I mean, there's really aggressive forms and then not as aggressive. The question, for, let's say someone is first diagnosed with the prostate cancer that's not progressed, let's say it's one of your family members, would you still recommend them coming to CHIPSA for certain treatments? Or would you have them do the conventional first?
Yeah, so I guess it all depends. Like one, they have to talk to a doctor because I'm not a doctor, so I wouldn't exactly be the one to recommend it. But like thought process behind it, stage 1 prostate cancer that hasn't metastasized or traveled. I mean, I believe that surgery has a pretty good prognosis. Of course, a lot of men don't want to have that surgery. So if that's the case, and they would have other options. There's reasonably good options in the United States for prostate cancer, especially before it's spread. And I think that for most people, that is the best choice where you cut it out, or I forget the different drugs that they get you on, the hormonal drugs, but I think lupine, I forget the medications, but it's reasonably good prognosis with prostate cancer. And a lot of it depends as well on what the Gleason score is, how aggressive it is. Some of it's so slow that, oncologists will tell them not to worry about it. And I would suggest, I would think that makes sense. I'll tell you one interesting thing with prostate cancer, though, is there's something called apatone, which is vitamin C and K3 at 100-to-1 ratio. We actually got apatone approved in Mexico about 3 years ago, but apatone has a phase 1 FDA trial for prostate cancer, and it actually shows that it almost flatlined the elevation of the rise of PSAs. So that is something that if it were me that had a family member, if I had prostate cancer, probably the first thing I do would be to start taking apatone. From what we've seen, relatively low side effects, and it just makes sense. But yeah, something like prostate cancer, I guess there's a lot of variables. It just depends on, like I said, Gleason score, if it's spread, those type of things.
Yeah. I want to talk about how people can proactively help themselves. Like we're talking about, when to get cancer, but I'm sure you've discovered a lot of things of, wow, like maybe we should start doing this before we get cancer. Imagine that. But before we talk about that, I want to ask about, your job is really tough in a lot of respects, and especially in an emotional respect, because these people, some of them die, and how do you personally deal with, and I don't know if you've seen the staff deal with that on a daily basis, even though you have a higher success rate than most, it's like people are coming in dire straits, I imagine.
Yeah, well, I mean, when it's stage 4, sent home, they're basically sent home to die with no great options. It's, more people die than survive. That's just a fact. And a lot of these clinics and stuff or hospitals don't like to admit that, even in conventional, but that's just the reality. We're dealing with stage 4, not just stage 4 patients, but, the toughest cases of stage 4. So you have to really have a passion for helping people and loving people no matter what. I think that for me, it's just realizing that every single person needs to be treated as an individual, not separate. And if I can make a connection with that and give them some hope, I think I'm doing a good job. I think that we're doing a good job anytime that we can extend life, which I believe we do a lot. I think we do a lot more life extension than curing cancer. That's just a reality. I mean, that's a lot more life extension than even getting a full remission in cancer. But what would you do? Like, how much is it worth to have an extra 3 months, 6 months, year, 2 years, 3 years with your loved one? I mean, think about this, Jeremy. Who's your closest loved one that has passed away?
Passed away wise? I had grandfathers and grandmother passed away.
Okay, so your grandfather. What would you give for another month to just
totally.
talk to them?
Yeah,
it's
priceless.
Priceless, man. And that's the difference that I can confidently say that we make every day. We make that difference for most patients, where I feel like we extend their life. And so that's what and that fills me up to where it's not a loss every time someone passes away, because we deal with a lot of death. And at first, you're trying to solve this extremely complicated problem. And coming from a fight background, it's like if they're dying, we weren't winning. But I don't believe that's really a logical case. That's an emotional case, but we have to think about this differently. And the main thing is, we want to extend life. When we get the miracles, we celebrate them. When we extend life, we celebrate them. And ultimately, that's kind of how I handle it, because I know that we're helping people overall.
What parallels do you draw from fighting cancer to fighting in the octagon?
Oh gosh, a lot. I mean, so I gave the analogy on that podcast about, the parallels between mixed martial arts and cancer. And so, like, in the very first UFCs, I always wanted to know what was the best style. What is it? Is it karate? Is it taekwondo? Is it Brazilian jiu-jitsu? I didn't even know about Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I wanted to know what actually worked. When I was a kid, my favorite time of the year was when the telephone book would come out, because we didn't have money to give me martial arts lessons. But I wanted to know. So I'd call up all the instructors, like, hey, you think your karate is better than this taekwondo? Like, hey, this is doing this. Like, I just wanted
market research.
Right. I was doing my research. And so when the UFC came out, it was like, oh my gosh, these questions are finally going to be answered. This is what I always wanted to know. And so this little Brazilian came in and won everything. Like, oh my gosh, it's Brazilian jiu-jitsu. That's where it's at. Like, that's what it is. Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Brazilian jiu-jitsu is the best martial arts. And then you started seeing the wrestlers learn how to defend the submissions from the Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy. And then you had the kickboxers start to learn how to defend the takedown of the wrestler, and the kickboxers started to win. And then it became this thing that's what we see as mixed martial arts today. But you couldn't really deny what worked and what didn't work. That's how we look at it.
You can deny it because one person emerges the winner.
Exactly. And with cancer, we took the same approach. Like, we weren't looking at it like a conventional oncologist or scientist per se. We knew the power of the mind going in. We knew the power of diet going in. It's like, you can't argue that with us. Like, we know it. You're not going to convince me that the mind doesn't matter. You're not going to convince me that diet doesn't matter. Like, no. Does it matter the same for everybody? No. But overall, if we have a system where we train people's mind in positive things and let them work on the issues that they've had, and let them focus on getting well, and let them let go of any of the baggage that they're holding on, they're probably going to get a better response. If they focus on a diet, no matter what it is, if it's not Gerson therapy, they're probably going to get a better response. That's from our MMA training, understanding that. But for the treatments, also, we couldn't deny that the alternative side and the conventional side don't have very good answers. Like, when I see some of these videos and the claims that people are making, like, oh, this is the answer for this. Like, man, they don't know what they're talking about. Like, I think they might think that they know what they're talking about, but it's way more complicated than, not eating sugar or, turning the body alkaline, or a lot of these things that.
What are some of the misconceptions? Yeah. What are some of those misconceptions that people hear that it obviously plays a role, but not as much as what some tout? What are, you just mentioned a few, what are some other misconceptions with the alternative side?
I think a big misconception is that if it works for one person, it's going to work for everybody. Do I believe that there's some strange results that are out there? Sure, but it's not. You're not going to do Rick Simpson oil with every person and get this result. Have I seen Rick Simpson oil put on a tumor and like on the outside of the skin and it go down or away? Yes, but how is that going to work if you have a tumor in your liver? How's that going to work if you have something like how's that going to work? And I don't think anybody can really tell us that. You know, the idea that a lot of the cases that you hear, they were doing a lot of other things. So they might have been doing conventional therapy as well, but you're saying, oh no, it's this. It's got to be this. Like, no, you don't know that. Just because you were eating apricot kernels and doesn't mean that it's apricot kernels that got rid of your cancer. It could have been the chemotherapy, or it could have been the radiation, or it could have been the surgery. I mean, there's some people out there that are like, that have surgery and then focus on their diet. And they're like, you know what? I don't know if I were to do it over again if I would have done the surgery. I'm like, you know, that doesn't make any sense to me. And you're suggesting to people that your cancer went away by your diet when, you know, well, it's just as much of a possibility, if not way more, that the surgery actually did more than the diet. You know, there's a lot of common sense than going the other way. The conventional side would say, oh, well, the diet didn't matter at all. No, I think it actually probably mattered a lot if someone did surgery and then really focused on being healthy. But, you know, it's a combination of things. And I think that people get so stuck on being right and it being one way when it could be a combination of things. And we need to study those combinations, but we don't need to dismiss them so quickly to make ourselves right and be aligned with, you know, one way of thinking. That's what's happened for so long. We told this side doesn't know, this side doesn't know. Another thing is like talking about a cure for cancer. What is a cure for cancer? I don't even know what it is. What is a cure for cancer? Because are you talking about the cure? Like what's the cure or what a cure? Because, you know, there's multiple definitions and I don't think anybody really knows. I hear people say, oh, this is the cure. Like, the cure? I mean, because
it's a bold statement.
What is a cure anyway? I don't even know what that is. So nothing that I've ever seen works in every patient. And most of it doesn't work in reality. So, you know, that's probably the biggest misconception. This isn't making anybody wrong. I'm saying be open-minded to all things and don't throw out other things just because, you know, of your position.
Yeah, I mean, you and Eddie and Scott were talking about ego and how you can't survive in the MMA if you have a big ego because you need to, what were you?
You lose every day. I mean, you go into the gym and, you know, we had above, when you walk into my gym, above the door, it would say, leave your ego at the door. Because, you know, you're getting into that training room with real professionals that know what they're doing. And if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to get tapped out really quickly. And it's no big deal. You're just not on that level. But, you know, when you go and train with the best, if you have an ego, you might get your arm broken. You know, you might think that, oh, I can go and load up my punches on this guy and on this high level professional. And then you hit them hard once and you're turning it up on them, trying to hurt them. They're going to knock you out real quick. So you got to leave your ego at the door because, you know, I've seen a lot of really tough guys walk in there and they leave, you know, crying and upset. So, you know, that's why I say leave your ego. That's why the ego is such a big thing in mixed martial arts. Same thing for cancer. Like, I mean, we just want to do what's best for the patient. There can't be an ego in it. You know, there can't be an ego in it. We just want to do what's best for the patient because if there's an ego in it, if we wanted to get rich, we're the original Gerson hospital. We could have just done Gerson therapy for the last 5 years and said, oh, no, it's all diet. Like, come on. I mean, has it worked for some? We've seen it work for some, but for the majority of people, no. It doesn't work like that. We had the original Gerson hospital, so it's hard to. Now, I love Gerson therapy. My mom did Gerson therapy. I've done Gerson therapy. I believe in the power of Gerson therapy. So you have somebody who believes in it, but just not as a cancer treatment, not as the only way to do things. So I think it's just having that open mindset that if people did that, I think even, you know, most people have a better chance of surviving their cancer. Being open-minded, not being closed-minded to, oh, it's Tijuana. I mean, that's a hurdle that a lot of times.
It's got a stigma.
people got to overcome it. I get it, but like, be open to possibility. Don't just be closed off. What if you being closed off caused you to die? What if there is a possibility in Tijuana? I mean, what if there is? I mean, that being closed off might have just ended your life.
Mm-hmm.
So it goes all the way around. Being open-minded to conventional therapy. Like, I ask myself this question a lot for cancer. If I got cancer, what would I do with certain cancers? Testicular cancer, high cure rate with conventional therapy. I'd be considering, conventional therapy. I'd have other things that I'm doing, but I'd be considering the high dose chemo. Leukemia, certain lymphomas, be doing probably a lot of conventional therapy, especially with leukemia. And if that didn't work, I'd be going and doing other things as well. Other cancers, stage 4 level, I mean, I would probably be doing what we're doing in Mexico for the most part. I mean, that's what I would be. If I had stage 4 cancer, there's no way solid tumor cancer that I'd be loaded up with tumor until the very end, after everything else failed. That would be like my backup plan, not the first, because I don't want to waste my immune system loading myself up with a chemo. That's just for me. But so I don't know if that kind of explains the idea, but being open-minded, even, we have access and knowledge to alternative and conventional cancer treatments that pretty much nobody else has. I mean, that's what we do. Have 25 plus doctors that work with us, have some of the top scientists in the world that work for us. We have a lot of different options. And my answer is be open to all possibility and be reasonable about everything and weigh your pros and cons. But don't be closed off to Tijuana just because it's Tijuana. That could kill some people.
Yeah, totally. Ed, thanks for sharing that. I think that's I love that comparison that you bring with the mixed martial arts to the cancer. Proactively speaking, we talk a lot about right now, end stage 4 stuff. For the person who wants to proactively prevent this, and what recommendations do you have for prevention, a regimen of prevention? And you mentioned a few things, but if someone right now is like, listen, my goal is to not come out with any cancer no matter what would you tell them to do to prevent it?
Well, I guess this will be a little controversial, but
controversial is fine.
Because there's a lot of people that don't like vaccines, but I think that we see a lot of HPV related cancers, and I think the Gardasil vaccine is. I used to not be a big fan, but seeing people die of those HPV related cancers and looking at the numbers, I think that's going to drop the level a lot. So that would be one. I think diet, now it's being proven obesity is a major cause of cancer. You got to have a good diet. Alcohol abuse.
So diet, talk about diet for a second, because you mentioned intermittent fasting before. What type of things should people look into?
So my thought for like the broad market is just be healthy with your diet. Lots of fruits and vegetables, good protein. Not a specific diet, but if you can drink fresh pressed organic juices, a lot of people do well being on a vegan diet. A lot of people do well being on a vegetarian diet, but just overall good, healthy diet. There's so many diets out there, and I think we get kind of caught in the weeds sometimes on which one to use and get in debates, but I don't personally think it matters as much as a whole. I just think people should
less processed foods, refined sugars type of stuff.
Low GMOs, lots of organic foods. That's kind of where I land on that.
And you were saying alcohol.
Oh yeah, alcohol is a major contributing factor to cancer. I mean, they pretty much wiped out smoking. Well, not wiped it out, but reduced the amount of people smoking, which is great. But alcohol is another big one that causes cancer. So I mean, really, those things I think will make a big difference. You got smoking out of the way, hopefully soon completely out of the way. If people were to realize how important it is to not overdrink, being on a good diet, and then be aware of the HPV related cancers. I think that's where I would start. And we all have these risk factors. I mean, and it's all living too. If I got cancer, I'd be like, you know what? I can see exactly why I got cancer. I mean, I lived a rough life in my 20s. I probably drank too much at one point. I mean, I was fighting, lots of things. And, I'm not attached to it too, by the way. We're just doing the best that we can. But being open-minded to the fact that we might be doing things that increase the risk. I know the risk. People hear this, you're hearing the risk. You get to choose your life and what you want to do. And, so we do have those things, kind of like obesity. Like, we know how to have people lose weight, but there's still 38% of people that are obese in the United States. Why is that? They're choosing to do it. Same thing. We know how to drastically reduce the chances of us getting cancer. It's just up to us to do those things.
Yeah. I always ask, first of all, Ed, thank you. Everyone should check out UnitedCancerCenters.com. They can also check out, CHIPSAHospital.org. Any other places we should point people towards? I have one last question but any other places online we should point people towards?
No, I think it's UnitedCancerCenters.com, CHIPSAHospital.org, thebigIdeaPodcast.com, and so on.
So, Ed, I always ask, since it's Inspired Insider, two questions. One, what's been a low moment, challenging moment that you had to push through? And then on the flip side, what's been a really proud moment for you?
Gosh.
What's been especially challenging time that you had to push through?
Yes. I think when we first opened CHIPSA, we all left our lives to do this. So, in Nashville, I have a great life. My home, it's called East Ivy Mansion. I sold Nashville Mixed Martial Arts. I had sold my clothing line, just kind of hanging back, and left everything, all my friends and family in Nashville, to go live in Tijuana. And getting the hospital open for those first 6 months was extremely difficult. We lived in the hospital because we want to know everything about running a hospital, from cleaning the toilets to properly cleaning the OR room to cleaning the ICU. We're a full service hospital now with over 200 employees. But to do that, we felt like we needed to know everything. And, really the first patients, I've seen some sad things as far as, patients dying. And that really took me, patients dying alone, with no family that might not even want to be with them. And so sitting with those patients at the end of their life and, just trying to, in a way, express love during the end, I get emotional talking about that. It's just so deep. People don't even realize, that impact that it can have on you, like being with somebody dying that doesn't have anybody. And then I think to myself, oh my God. So I have them in the ICU. Let's say they're not even paying. Like we're making sure they stay here. They don't have friends or family. They're in the ICU. How do you give them, let them die with some dignity, and those were some of the hardest times for me, coming to terms with the importance of dying with dignity and dying with people around me. If it's a disease at the end, you get a car wreck, it's different, but like if I'm dying, I don't want to die alone. And so that had a big impact. I think that can change you as a human being. I could probably have a whole podcast on the learnings of that. Actually, just thinking about it, bringing me back to those moments. So yeah, whenever I hear those stories of people being left by their families or whatever, that's all. Those are the hardest ones for me. Because we really love people. It's like it's heartbreaking. So yeah, that's that.
Yeah.
Gosh, the best times are when we get clear scans. Which is a lot. We get these clear scans from patients, and someone comes in and we see this. They come in a wheelchair, they leave walking. Seeing that over and over again. Those are big celebratory times, and it's really like knowing in those moments that you're giving people more life and more time with their family. That is, that's priceless there as well.
What was a clear scan that maybe sticks out to you with, I don't know if it was a special young person or a certain case that, you thought, wow, I can't believe we actually accomplished this?
Sure. Yeah, I would say a lady named Charlotte Trainer. She was actually a friend of the family. So anytime I have family members or friends of the family, it's like, it's a little more personal, obviously. And so she didn't do any low-dose chemotherapy or anything. She was 72 years old. The doctor had given her 6 months to 12 months to live with high-dose chemotherapy at that age, which seems crazy. And she came in and we did some cryoablation to her original surgery site with the idea that she still would have tumor antigens there, and those antigens would give antigen presentation to the rest of the body. So if there was cancer in other parts of the body, it would theoretically eat it up. We cryoed her liver as well. She had a met on her liver. We couldn't get to the spot on her lung, or the spots on her lung. And about, I guess, 2 months later, so it's 3-week treatment, no chemotherapy at all, lots of immunotherapy, Coles, VG5000, Apatone, and 2.5, 3 months later, completely clear scan. And it was in October 2 years ago, so about 2 years and 4 months ago, and she's still alive today.
Wow. Ed, I want to be the first one to thank you. Thanks for sharing this. Thanks for doing what you do. Everyone check out UnitedCancerCenters.com. Check out CHIPSAHospital.org. Thanks again.
Oh, thank you so much, Jeremy. Thank you.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like $100 grand.